Okay, so now we're recording. Cool. So again, you do have access to the What's New directly from the home page when you're in the test environment, so you could see what's going on with version 9.0. All right, but today we're going to be focused on our new autocode enhancements and our Ascribe coder enhancements, most of which are put in place to move the functionality that's currently in Phrase Analyzer to our multi-browser compatible environment. So we're moving Phrase Analyzer tools, Phrase Analyzer functionality, to our autocode tool and our Ascribe coder tool. Okay, so I'm going to start out here on the studies page. There we go. And I'm going to be working in the version 9 static hair webinar today. All right. And I'm going to go directly to the questions page. And I'm going to start out in Q11. Okay. And I'm going to right click on Q11 and I'm going to choose autocode. So we're going to start out in the autocode tool. And that's funny because typically this is there. Actually, it's typically set at 1. There we go. Okay, so when we first go into the autocode page, what the autocode page was developed to do is to allow us to autocode our closed ends, so our numeric closed ends, but it's also set up to allow us to autocode our other specify questions, and now and build a code book from our closed ends or other specified questions. Previously, we couldn't restrict the comments that were displayed on the autocode page. We're just displaying all of our responses. You see that here. They're in alpha order. We're displaying our responses. Okay? We do give a count of how many respondents gave that response. Okay? So there were 12 people that gave Chinette. There were 114 that said Dixie. Exactly this, okay? So there's 114 duplicates, all right? So what we now have the ability to do is to click on this little settings icon and hide items with less than a certain number of mentions. So this is like the make codebook feature in Phrase Analyzer. Okay, in Phrase Analyzer, we can say make a codebook for anything that has at least this many mentions. Here, we get to say hide items with less than. So I'm going to hide items with less than 10 mentions and hit OK. And now you'll see that I've got a smaller set of responses, maybe the start of a codebook here. Okay, and each of these responses, so Chinette was given 12 times, exactly that. So Chinette was duplicated by our respondents 12 times. Dixie, 114 times. Hefty, 21 times. Okay, so now I can say, well, yeah, that looks like that's a nice start for my code book. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these responses to my empty codes. Okay, so I copy the responses and then I add the codes. When I add the codes, what the system's going to do is it's going to populate the input ID field, the output ID field, and the regular expression field based on the response. Okay? Now, it'll only populate these fields if the response is less than 50 characters. Okay? Actually, we'll only create the code if the response is less than 50 characters, and it will tell you if you've got responses that are more than 50 characters. And some of the questions that come up is, why is the input ID and the output ID the actual response? Remember, this was developed originally for our numeric responses, right? For our closed-end responses. And when we're creating a numeric code book, we automatically populate the input ID, the output ID, and the regular expression with that numeric response. Okay, so that's why we're doing that. We can talk more about that, you know, with the development team. So now, what has happened is that in Ascribe Coder, and I can just click on the navigation icon and go to Ascribe Coder. In Ascribe Coder, we have this fabulous little code book. Okay. If we right-click on one of the codes and hit Code Properties, again, you'll see that the description, input ID, output ID, and regular expression were all a copy of the verbatim response that was used to create this code. If I right-click on it and hit Search Any, you're going to see some of those responses that were coded with Chinette. Okay? And it would be the same for Dixie, Hefty, None, and Solo. So this code book was automatically created using the AutoCode tool. All right, so that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the AutoCoded tool and the ability to adjust the minimum number of mentions so you could build a code book. So now we're in Ascribe Coder, and let's talk a little bit about Ascribe Coder. I'm going to bring up my uncoded responses. Hit go. So these are my uncoded responses in Ascribe Coder. And before I go forward to talk about the next two items, one thing has to be in place. In our response settings, you want to make sure that we've got drag selected responses to codebook toggled on. Okay? Without this toggled on, the next two things that I show you will not be possible. So this is a new setting, and again, this setting is available under the response settings, response pane settings. Okay? And it is called drag selected responses to codebook. And this option cannot be turned on at the same time as drag response to copy coding. So drag selected responses to codebook, toggled on. And the first thing that I want to show you is how we can add a code to the codebook. So let's say that Daisy needs to be added to the codebook. This is a good code. I want to add it to the codebook, and I want to populate the expression and all that other good stuff. So I'm going to drag Daisy. So I select it and drag the Daisy response to the codebook node. Notice that it's pink, okay? And when I drop it, we open up a new code called Daisy. The new code is opened up. It does try to give the, populate the input and the output field. And also it puts Daisy in as a regular expression, okay? So code is opened, regular expression is populated. I hit OK, and notice also that Daisy and any Daisy duplicates have been coded with the code that I just opened, with the code that I just created. All right? So we've got a new way to create codes and a new way to code by dragging a response to the codebook node. Now, you can also drag a response. Let me add a net here, and I'm going to call this my off-brand net. Okay? Take out my values, toggle on the net option, and hit OK. So let me do a search again. All right. So now let's say that I want to add a code to my off-brand net. Okay. And maybe the code that I'm going to add is going to be store brand. So let me go down here and grab store brand. And I'm going to grab store brand and drag it and drop it on my off-brand net. And you'll see that it opened a store brand code with the regular expression store brand. Of course, you could edit your regular expression if you wanted to. You don't have to stick with the expression it suggests. It just uses the code description. Okay? And hit OK. So you can create codes by dragging a response to the codebook node or to a net. All right? It creates the code. It populates the regular expression. It applies the code. Now, it's only applying to the duplicates, and most of us know this, because I've got the apply codes duplicates all turned on, okay? So if you have that turned on, it'll apply to the duplicates. Otherwise, it'll just apply to the one that you drag over. So we can also, search again here, so we can also create codes. So you see we've got this generic and then generic spelled like this. I'll put no frills in with generic just because I can. So I'm going to put these guys together, okay? And so I've selected 3 responses. It tells me here I've got 3 responses selected, and I'm going to drag over to the off-brand net. When I drop this on the off-brand net, you'll notice the code is opened. The regular expressions are populated. Okay, so each response that I had selected is now populating the regular expression field, but there's no description. We don't try to guess what the description is. Ascribe's not trying to guess what the description is. So we would have to give it a description and hit OK. And now those guys are coded. Okay, so again, you can select multiple responses, okay, and drag to the code book to open a new code and populate the regular expression field. All right, so now we've got our generic code. You can also update existing codes or apply existing codes this way as well. So for instance, let's say I've got Chinet here, and I think I've got a Chinex somewhere. There it is, Chinex. Okay. So both of these, you know, I want to apply the Chinet code to these responses, but I also want to update my regular expression. It's a new spelling of Chinet I've not seen before. Okay. So I can drag over and drop on my Chinet code, and you'll notice that it updates my regular expression with the text of those two responses. I hit OK, and it applies the code to those responses and the duplicates. All right, so this is a nice way to kind of get our regular expressions updated if we want to update our regular expressions for those of us that use those for coding. It's also just another way to code. All right, so we can now, so we've completely opened up dragging from the response to the code book. Okay, so dragging the response to the code that it belongs in. Now this only works for the entire response, okay, so you would drag the entire response. So if you're coding, let's go ahead and hit OK. Notice it updated my regular expression with Dixie with 2 X's, okay, there we go. All right, but if we're trying to drag and drop something that's big, okay, I buy what's on sale or something that looks like I need it. I don't go for brands. So I'm going to just drop this into generic. It probably would be sale brand. And notice it said all of the selected verbatims were not added to the code's regular expression. For a verbatim to be added to the code's regular expression in this manner, all the following must be true. Verbatim must be 50 characters or less. Verbatim cannot contain regular expression operators. We got a list of some of those there. And the verbatim cannot contain multiple sentences separated by punctuation marks. So it will go ahead and show us the code, and if I hit OK, it would go ahead and apply the code there. Okay, so what I'm saying to you is 2 things. First of all, if you're, when you're dragging and dropping, you're not dragging a piece of the response, okay, and applying a code to that piece of the response. That feature in Phrase Analyzer isn't here, but you're actually dragging the entire verbatim response. Now you could drag that response to multiple codes, okay, but that just seems kind of The other thing that I'm showing is that if your response, the response that you're trying to drag is more than 50 characters, you're not going to populate the regular expression field with it. Okay, that's not going to happen. All right. So those are our drag drop options that we have available. Now, for those of you, one of the things that if you do have this drag selected responses to codebook operational, then you can't highlight a piece of the verbatim and add it to the notes field. Okay, so I know some of us, let me just show you, I know some of us like to be able to highlight, right-click, add selection to notes. All right, but that is not available if we're dragging selected responses to codebook. Okay, so we do have another option to use these new features, and those are in our right-click menus. Okay, so if I decide that I want to add, let's say that I want to add Kroger and Walmart and I can't remember all of them. I think Sweetheart might be one. Jewel Brand is one for sure. But if I want to add all of these to my store brand, right, I can select them. I can right-click on store brand and update regular expression based on selected responses. And we're not only updating regular expression, we're actually applying that code to the selected responses as well. Okay, maybe more importantly, we are applying that code to the selected responses. So my store brand code was just updated with Kroger, Walmart, and Jewel Brand. Yeah, I showed you that there in the regular expression. So we do have the right click, if we right click on a code, to update regular expression based on selected responses. And if we want to add a new code, let's just say Bounty needs to be added here. I can click on Bounty, right-click on the codebook node or right-click on a net, and I can add the code based on the selected response. So it opens the Bounty code, updates the regular expression. There we go. Okay, so those two new options, again, if you click on the codebook node or you click on the a net, you can add codes based on the responses you have selected, right? So you always pay attention to which responses you have selected, but you can also update regular expression based on the selected responses. Okay, so that feature, really it's like kind of a combined one feature, the ability to update regular expressions and apply codes based on selected responses, open codes based on selected responses. You can do that either by dragging and dropping or by using the right-click options. Okay, so so those are a couple of our Ascribe coder enhancements. There's a few more enhancements that don't really have to do with phrase analyzer, but that I want to make sure that we touch on. All right. The first one is that when we open codes, we keep track of who created the code, who opened that code. Okay. So you'll notice that when we choose created by user, okay, when in our settings, so let me go back to that. Sometimes I just get ahead of myself. I click on the codebook settings on the show tab, the created by user option. I toggle that on, and you'll notice that each code now has a username behind it, and that's because I opened all of these codes. Okay, now it only keeps track of the person who created the code originally. If Julie were to go in here and edit all of these codes, I would still come up as the user who created the code. It doesn't matter if she renames it, if she completely changes the code. Doesn't matter, I'm the user who opened the code, okay? So we only keep track of the person who opened the code, not who edited it, not who changed the wording, not any of that, not who applied it, not who renumbered it, just the person who opened the code. We keep track of that. We display it here for you, okay? So that is the created by user, so we can now know who opened codes. And the other option that I want to make sure I talk about is our Singleton option. So the new Singleton option, if we look at the code properties, and you may have noticed this when I was opening codes earlier, there's this new option called Singleton, okay? A Singleton code is a code that once it's marked Singleton, it can only be applied by itself. You can't add that code to a response that has an existing code. You can't add another code to a response that has the Singleton code applied to it, okay? And that's moving forward from the time that you make it a Singleton. So now if I try to add this code to Bounty, to the Bounty response, it's going to say, nope, can't do it. But if I add it to the thank you, I definitely can. But then let's say I try to add that, it's going to say, nope, can't do it, okay? Because the none is a Singleton code. Now, along with the Singleton code, making something a Singleton code, we do now have in our codebook tools a Singleton tab that tells us that no Singleton codes are applied with other codes, okay? Because again, it's just moving forward from the time that you mark it a Singleton. So if you mark something a Singleton, you might want to go up and check and see, you know, well, where are there any Singletons, or is the Singleton applied with any other codes? So that's the new Singleton option. A question that comes up here, or a statement that was made, and a question as well, is can we make all the codes in the codebook Singletons? You absolutely can, one at a time. So you can right-click on each individual code, and you can make every code in the codebook a Singleton if you wanted. Okay? You might ask why you would do that. What I've heard from other users is that that way you can have a codebook that can be used for single mention coding, right? So if every code in your codebook is a Singleton code, that means that you can never have, you know, you can never apply a code with another code. So you've pretty much forced single mention coding and, you know, only allowing one code to be applied. Now, the issue with that is if you had more codes to the codebook, you'd have to absolutely make sure you made them Singleton. But that is one way to go about doing that, okay? So that's the Singleton code option. Then one other thing here, and that's when we are searching our codebook. So let's say that I search for a code, I hit go, All right. Previously, when we were in the search mode, right, we couldn't add codes to the codebook. But that restriction has been lifted. We can now add codes to the codebook when we're in the search codebook mode. So when we're displaying a partial codebook, we can absolutely insert or add codes based on selected responses or whatever else it is that you need to do. Okay? So that is the other option that we have available there. And one more that only affects certain people using certain softwares. But with the codebook unlocked, you know we have this direct edit mode. When unlocked, direct edit mode, okay? And when we're in direct edit mode, let me just see here, turn on the code ID. All right. Most of us never want to touch the code ID, the codebook ID, but now it is actually available for direct edit. For those of you that do need to edit, you know who you are. Those of you that do need to edit the codebook ID, you can now do that in direct edit mode. So that restriction has been lifted moving forward. Well, with the version 9.0 release. Okay. I believe those are all the things that I wanted to talk about for the AutoCode enhancements, the Ascribe coder enhancements. Again, we're slowly but surely moving the phrase analyzer functionality into AutoCode and coder. So you're welcome to test this out on the test servers if you'd like. But Julie, were there any questions that came up while we went through this today? Not yet. Okay, so I'll go ahead and unmute. Oops, there we go. I went ahead and unmuted everyone. So if you do have any questions, you're free to go ahead, and the floor is open. You can yell them out or.
Hey, Lara, it's Jan.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Great presentation, thank you. This is really awesome. One question, and I'm sure that it will be something that may be in the works, but perhaps not possible. Could the Singleton be applied to an entire codebook in the codebook properties, or does it have to be applied to each code? I think you said it has to be applied to each code, but is there a possibility in the future where it could be added to the entire, the codebook property overall?
I don't know if a case has been open on this yet. I know we were going to, but if not, I have actually talked to Charles about that, and he said we could discuss that. That might be something we could do for a future release. We won't be doing that for 9.0. No, but no. There is a possibility of doing that. Now he had a couple of questions. Of course, developer mind. He had a couple of questions and just like, well, okay, but yeah, we are discussing that on whether that's something we should do. So
yeah, just something that would be applied to all codes, perhaps.
Right.
Simply because I don't know that you would. Well, there would be cases where you would only apply one code within a code book that would be a singleton, but it would be handy rather than checking each one. But I think you will think about that anyway.
Cool. Thank you for that, Jan. And it's great to hear your voice.
Thank you. Good to hear yours.
Anybody else have anything? Any questions or comments? Nothing. All right. I will also let you know, the help system in version 9.0 has been updated to reflect all of these changes. It's also available in the What's New, and we will have these videos available as well. Thank you guys for your time today. Everybody have a great day, and look forward to hearing your feedback on version 9.0. Look for it on July 8th. Thanks, everyone. Bye.